Hello and welcome to The Real Deal. Now, after being Lord of the Manor, then naturally the next step along the path to Hollywood is surely starring in an 80s slasher pastiche, right?
Well, at least Dan Stevens of Downton Abbey fame certainly thought so. So let's check out a clip from The Guest. Oh, the trailer looks quite good. Joe, I know you enjoyed it, but before you tell us how much you loved this film, what's it all about?
It is basically sort of an 80s slasher pastiche, and what happens is Dan Stevens, who is the guest, turns up on the doorstep of a family home, sort of middle America in the middle of nowhere. He apparently has served with their now deceased son overseas for the US Army, and he comes to stay with the family. At first he seems kind of quiet and alien, but then he ends up sort of connecting with each family member individually and enriching their lives in one way or another. But he clearly has a dark past, but will it catch up with him?
Oh my god, I love it already! Okay, it sounds really interesting. I am very excited about this. Why should I be excited? What's good?
Everything is good about it. It's great.
You, Joe. Everything.
Honestly, everything's good. Go see it. I really liked it. Basically, those of you who have seen Downton Abbey will spend the first minute thinking, that's weird, that's cousin Matthew from Downton Abbey. Why is he speaking all American? What's this stubble all about? And
is he speaking good American?
Yeah, accent's fantastic.
Okay.
Great bit of stubble as well. He looks like a right dreamboat in this, I tell you. He's a bit of a sap in Downton, but instantly, and because it's such a good performance, you completely forget what he's played before. The main thing about this film is Dan Stevens is fantastic. Now, you might kind of look at it and think, I suppose, that it is your straight up horror flick. It's not. I think it's a comedy more than it's anything.
You just misinterpreted it. I'm not sure the studios would be happy with that.
Do you know what? We sat in a screening full of critics who incidentally applauded at the end.
Great. And
people laughed the whole way through. Best thing about this film, Dan Stevens' comic timing is fantastic, as is the rest of the cast. It was also worth a note on the cast. The dad, the son as well in it, really well played. It's a very funny film. Of course, at its heart, and as it builds towards its climax, it gets a little bit darker. But it sort of doffs the cap to those 80s slasher films as well. Something Scream's done.
So you've mentioned about the performances, but in terms of the way it's shot, the way it's kind of portrayed to us, is that really well done as well?
From this start, you're thinking 80s teen slasher. It starts and it's just a pair of boots running down a highway, and then the guest.
Love
just
that.
It's just straight into it.
Is it like diagonally across, like in that kind of 80s?
In sort of jagged writing. yeah, it is. Yeah,
amazing.
Jagged writing with sort of the pale blue font as well, and it has a very sort of 80s synth heavy soundtrack, which builds towards a crescendo throughout. It's really funny. It takes a darker twist towards the end, which actually works really well. And the central performance from Dan Stevens is honestly just fantastic.
Okay, so you are raving about this film. There's got to be some flaws, unless you're going to give it 5 stars in a minute. We don't know. Ooh, tense. Almost as tense as this slasher flick. But what's not so good about this film?
I found it really hard to pick out things I didn't like about this film.
Right.
I think because it is so funny, there's a point where it turns and maybe you might not go with it. And at that point, you might find it a little bit distasteful, or it loses you and you lose sort of some of the regard, that the love that you had for Dan Stevens' character. That being said, I went with it. Pretty sure everyone in the screening.
You've got to immerse yourself in it.
Well, I think it works. I think it works. It does sort of change the tone a little bit in the third act, and it really works.
How long is the film?
The film has, in the age of the super duper comic book big fighting robot film that goes on for 9 weeks, it runs at a lovely 99 minutes.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Brilliant. So I was going to ask about pace. Like, you know, does that let it down? Is it too slow in parts? Is it too fast in parts that you can't take in what's going on?
Do you know what? I think it's perfect. It's very sort of a classic linear narrative structure, and it jumps straight into it. The sort of the body of the film is the funny stuff as you get to know the guest a little bit more, and it turns out he's a right badass. He is proper badass is our Dan Stevens. And then at the end it just descends into sort of more traditional horror movie sort of stuff that you'd be used to seeing, and also there is scope for more from this character to come as well. I thought it was really great.
Okay, so you've heard the dark side of Dan Stevens is coming to life here on The Guest. Joe, what's the real deal? I think I kind of know it though.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think if you want to see a film that has a great central performance, and I think really genuinely a star-making performance as well, then I think this is a film for you. If you're a Downton fan, it will certainly shock you. Also, if you like those slasher flicks of the 80s and 90s, then it's something for you as well, and it's genuinely funny. I haven't laughed this much in a movie since we went to see 22 Jump Street, and that is saying something, because this is meant to be a horror film. Dan Stevens is one of the funniest actors I've ever seen, and who knew?
It sounds ace. How many stars?
I'm going to give it 4.5. The only reason that it fails to get that final half star, I would love to give it 5. I'd love to give it 10, to be honest with you. I absolutely loved it. But I am aware that some people might not go with the change in the plot. And also, if you don't quite buy into the comedy element of it, you might find that a little bit tiresome. I'm only judging this based on what other people have said to me, and obviously I'm very well aware that it can't just be what I think. I absolutely loved it. Just with that in mind, 4.5 stars. Sorry, Dan.
What are you gonna do? Nothing bad. For the damages.
Well, that is the 4.5 star real review of The Guest from the lovely Joe Forrester. But what we want to know is what your favourite slasher movie is. Mine is Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Intense.
Intense. Lots of slashing. Brilliant.
Slashing, chopping, hacking. It's a bit of a heavy one, isn't it?
Yeah, for a girl, yeah.
I reckon mine is probably Scream. Now, the thing about Scream is it's a forerunner of something like The Guest, because it is very much taking the mickey out of that slasher genre, but at the same time being a brilliant slasher film. Yeah, and it's properly funny as well. For those of you who are too young to remember it, but old enough to now watch it legally, okay, then I do suggest you check it out. Classic. Let us know what you reckon below. I'm sure you've got some different opinions. It's at The Real Film Show as well on Twitter. Get yourself on the Facebook page too. And don't forget, if you want to see all the other news, reviews, and latest views, then you can check out The Real Deal on film.com too. See ya.